Okay. Good evening. And welcome to everyone who's joining us on the internet. Well, how many of you had an interesting time this week observing your thinking? Let's say, how many of you didn't succeed at getting through the week without noticing how you use your thoughts to one degree or another? How many of you found out that your thoughts are always from the past? If you, I'm not going to say think about it, if you pay attention, you'll realize that your thoughts are always a rehearsal of something already known. Not one of you has ever had an original, brand new thought. That which is new is described by the word insight, or as an aha, or as revelation. That's when something new is experienced. And once the something new has happened, you can then think about it. That should be a big eye-opener. Whenever you are thinking, you are rehearsing something from the past. If you live in your thinking, you're living in the past. You're not even living in the present. You are thinking about whatever is confronting you. You observe it not with your mind, but with your thinking. Oh, that's a bald-headed eagle. Oh, that's a swallow. Oh, that's a fir tree. Oh, it looks like rain. You're always looking with your thinking. You're always looking with what you already think you know. Again, that means that your general method of being or of operating is one of living in the past. That in itself should impel you to question the way you be presently. Because you don't want to be trapped in the past. You don't want your very existence to be an ever-occurring rehearsal of that which is old. I mean, after all, when you have family members who are getting into their senior years, and all they do is begin to talk about what happened in 1945 or when they met Joe, and what they did on their first date. And every time you get together, you hear some tidbit about the past. You say, oh, they're beginning to suffer from senility. And you don't feel good about it. So why feel good about yourselves when you, even when you think you are functioning in the present, are simply rehearsing the past? Now we've talked and talked and talked about looking at everything with fresh eyes, looking at everything with innocent eyes, meaning absent the influence of past experience, past concepts, past convictions, and being curious to see the more of what God is being right there than what you're presently seeing. It's wise counsel. Now, change of subject. Who are rules for? You all know that rules exist, but who are rules for? Rules are for those who have forgotten how to love. Rules are an artificial means of establishing and maintaining order and harmony when order and harmony do not naturally occur. Why don't they naturally occur? Because you've forgotten how to love. How did you forget how to love? By getting a divorce from your father. By saying, I'd rather see it my way. I'd rather do it my way. I want to be the determiner of what everything is. I want to be the determiner of what happens. I want to try my hand at being the authority in my life. And so in effect, you pulled the plug, disconnected yourself from your source, forgot who you were, lost the experience of the movement of love through you that the Father is being by presencing Himself right there where you are. And you found yourself without natural harmony. But you had just had the experience of harmony. So quickly, you decided what you needed to do to reestablish what had disappeared by your own hand, by your own authority. And the only way you could do it was by establishing a mutual agreement with someone else as to what good behavior was constituted of, and that everyone had better abide by this, so there's a certain degree of peace and security for everyone. So structures, ideas were brought together in structures or patterns to be abided by. They were called manners. They were called codes of behavior. They were called protocols by which to live. And to date, a certain amount of harmony has been established. It fluctuates. but a certain amount of harmony has been established. But you know what? It's a harmony that depends entirely upon mutual agreements. And if the mutual agreements are abandoned, harmony ceases. So even when there's a certain modicum of harmony, it's not really real. It's simply the current evidence of, quote, good behavior. That's not security. That's not stability. And it wouldn't do me a bit of good to point this out to you, because the truth of what I'm saying is unsettling. I'm saying it in this context, that there is a natural harmony. There is a natural order, because there is love. And there is love because there is a God. There is something beyond whatever tiny authority each of you has created out of whole cloth, out of imagination, and convinced yourself that you have. And it's your birthright to be experiencing this love. It is natural to you for this love to flow through you because you're undefended against it, because you are willing to be without limits or boundaries. And it's time for you to re-access it. It's time for you to stop suffering in ignorance of what you are and what your function is. It's time for you to become free of rules. Oh boy, the ego can have a heyday with that. A lot of New Age thinking does revolve around the idea that rules are opinions, rules aren't real, and that one must learn to let go and move freely and just be whatever you feel like being. But see, that still doesn't embrace the fact that there is a God. In other words, there is some universal absolute, some universal consistent movement of being that is so pure that it is without conflict, without opposites. And for this reason, it is eternal. And for this reason, there is something going on for you to have a misperception of. And you will forever have something to have a misperception of, because reality is permanent. Reality is eternal. You have to arrive at a point where you stop valuing your perception of reality, of this that is forever changeless, but forever new. Now, when I'm talking to you, I'm not talking to who you think you are. And I'm not talking to the patterns of thoughts that you have adopted in order to define yourself and define your world. I'm talking to the you that you are. I'm talking to the you that is place where the movement of God is happening. I'm talking to God right there, where each of you is. You don't think that's what's there. But I persist in talking to the you that is there and telling you that it is there. And I will continue to encourage you to stop denying it and to open the door just a crack through the use of curiosity. Now, what does this mean? This means that I am standing as an advocate for you and 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 everyone watching. I am standing as an advocate for the real you. I am standing in a place of confirming and reconfirming to you a self that you are inclined to deny the existence of. A self that you don't believe you can really be. Why? Because you're so damned attached to the definition you've made up about yourself, to your thoughts. And what am I doing? I'm setting an example. What I am doing is showing you what you need to be doing. You need to be standing as an advocate for your brother and sister. Being willing to not be deterred by your brothers or sisters' insistence that they are nothing but their accumulated thoughts, and their insistence upon operating on the basis of the past themselves. How many of you during this past week wanted to not think, but to look into your brother's eyes with innocence and listen for, be open to the revelation or the experience of the truth about your brother? And had your brother, figuratively speaking, spit in your face or treat you really badly? And how many of you found that when a brother or a sister was behaving in a totally gross way, that you immediately reverted to thinking? Immediately reverted to your pre-existing definitions of them. Well, of course, what could I have expected? Of course they're behaving this way. That is the way they are, and they have a history of behaving this way. Well, what was that? What just happened? You obviously weren't being still, were you? There wasn't silence, was there? There wasn't a willingness to stand there in the face of the flak coming toward you. There wasn't in you, in the face of the flak coming toward you, a state of disbelief, a willingness to not validate the flak, and not validate it with a history to back it up and convict your brother or sister further. and solidify the picture. When a brother or sister behaves in a way that seems to threaten your peace, you will automatically shift into thinking. You will automatically shift into the past and join them. They in their past, you in your past, thinking that you're present with each other in the present, instead of totally embroiled in your own private pictures and your own private thoughts and definitions. What's a definition? It's a thought that's been rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed until it's dug a groove, so to speak. And then it sits there even if you're not thinking it. You have rules and definitions already in place about everybody and everything. Even things you don't know about. I mean, you wouldn't say that that was possible, but the minute anybody presents something new to you that you haven't heard about before, watch and see what fraction of a second it takes for you to have an opinion about it. Just a fraction of a second. You know what? If you're sued for one reason or another, and you have to go into court, you seek an attorney. What does that mean? You seek an advocate to stand with you in order to bring out the truth, so that you're not convicted falsely. And that one has to be willing to stand as an advocate for you, no matter how much argument regarding your guilt is brought forth. No matter how convincingly it is put. No matter whether the arguments against you are dishonest and evil in intent, or whether they are not really that bad but are demeaning about you. You need someone who is not going to be swayed by false arguments stated beautifully, stated well, stated intelligently, stated logically. You are not orphans. You are not what you think you are. You are not bodies getting old, deteriorating, subject to deterioration. You are not something that started with a sperm and an egg. You are not a physical development in process. You are, again, mind. You are the conscious awareness in which all experience is going on, including the experience of body. Now, I'm repeating myself, but you need to hear the repetition because it's so easy for you to slip back into your thinking. Now, if thinking is a rehearsal of the past, then it means that thinking is always a form of habit. you're not inclined to change your habits. You're not inclined to abandon your habits. You need help. You need encouragement. And that's what I'm here for. And that's what the Holy Spirit is here for. That which is nothing more than your right mind is here for. That which you divinely are is present and active right now on behalf of unrutting you from your thinking. How many of you during this past week found your thinking getting you into trouble over and over and over and over again? Something would happen, and instead of staying in that place where you held your vision innocently, you slipped into a stream of thoughts, a rehearsal of the past that always put someone else at a disadvantage. And then, remembering what we had talked about last week, you realized, oh boy, I did it again. I abandoned my peace. I abandoned my valuing the silence in which love, the vision of Christ, the Father's perfect vision of everything, could occur. And so, I've made myself miserable, and I'm going to stop now and get back into my peace. And you got back into your peace, and perspective returned. The situation that had caused you to lose your mind hasn't changed, but you're able to look at it without getting into your knee-jerk habitual responses. And in the process of being willing to stay with the situation from your peace, something else happened that caused you to feel vulnerable again. And just like that, you're back thinking. You're back being angry. You're back justifying your being angry. And convicting the one who caught you off guard of guilt. How many of you had this happen multiple times, enough times, that you're now able to look back without judgment on yourself, but with the clarity that allows you to see how it happens, the mechanics of it, so that you can look at it a little bit more objectively and thereby more easily avoid it when the next trigger comes. For many, it's been a week of a great deal of growth, strenuous as it might have been. But of course, what made it strenuous was the ease with which you slipped back into the habit of thinking and valuing and validating the thinking.